Hello and welcome. I am so happy to have with me today Carolyn Williams, Dr. Carolyn Williams, and let me tell you a little bit about her. She is a PhD and registered dietitian, a 2017 James Beard Journalism Award winner, and a leading culinary nutrition expert. She's developed a knack for breaking down complex science into simple, concise bits of information and tips. That's how I found her, was all her great tips on Instagram. She writes for a variety of online and print publications on health topics, ranging from sleep to fasting to mental health, and a lot about anti-inflammatory foods. She's considered a leading nutrition expert on chronic inflammation and has two anti-inflammatory cookbooks. The first one is Meals That Heal, 100 plus everyday anti-inflammatory recipes in 30 minutes or less. And she's got one coming out September 27th. One pot meals that heal. And I'm super excited about that one because I'm all about the one pot meal, especially like weeknights, right? When you want to cook and have good food, but you don't want it to be too many dishes. She also co-hosts the Happy Eating podcast, which explores the connection between diet, lifestyle, and mental wellness through candid, lighthearted conversations. I'm in Minnesota. Carolyn is coming to us from her home in Alabama, where she lives with her two kids, and she teaches at a local community college, culinary arts and nutrition courses. So welcome, Carolyn. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be with you today.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons I invited Carolyn was I, on Instagram, found her post about top 8 anti-inflammatory foods. And it's funny, I don't say this out loud in the clients that I coach, but we're using anti-inflammatory foods for weight loss because it's a really healthy, natural way to lose, and people always feel better when they eat that way.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about how anti-inflammatory foods help with weight loss?
Yeah, I think inflammation isn't something that most people usually associate with weight gain or weight loss, but it can play a really big role. Well, inflammation is involved in every chronic condition, including, weight gain and carrying excess body fat. But it's not something people tend to think about or think like, oh, that might be why I'm having a plateau or why it's just not budging like it seems like it should. So anytime you carry a little excess weight on your body fat, that automatically generates some low-grade inflammation. And low-grade inflammation is what you hear referred to as the bad inflammation. Inflammation by design, as you know, is good. It was created by the body to keep us healthy and heal us. But that's acute inflammation, where let's say you sprain your ankle and it's painful and it's maybe red or
Right.
and it goes away, because that's how inflammation was designed to work. It goes away once it's got your body on the road to recovery and healing or fighting off that bacteria or whatever it is. Chronic inflammation or low-grade inflammation is more subtle, and it's triggered by lifestyle. So diet, activity or lack of activity, stress, lack of sleep, those kind of things. And the problem with it is it doesn't go away. It sticks around usually until you actually do something about it. So, a lot of us, I say, not to necessarily scare people, but pretty much all adults are going to have some level of low-grade chronic inflammation in their body. It's just more, more you need to manage it and keep it on that low level, kind of on the continuum at the lower end. But when you gain weight or are carrying excess body fat, that automatically increases inflammation within the body. Studies have looked at blood inflammatory markers. And when you're carrying that excess weight, those markers are higher. Well, the problem with this is it kind of starts to create a snowball effect, a very quiet, subtle snowball effect. But when you are carrying a little extra weight, a little or a lot, it doesn't matter, and then have this low-grade inflammation, well, that's going to push you more towards insulin resistance. Even though you may not realize it, but you may get more of those kind of, I call it the roller coaster, like with blood sugar, where you're up and down and, you're really just, almost, and I remember this from earlier in my life and my career when I hadn't really figured out all the insulin and glucose stuff for me personally, but I felt like I was kind of like controlled by my glucose, my ups and downs, I was ready to
feeling
breakfast
hangry
like
when
it.
it went down.
Yes. Those are early signs of insulin resistance, but your body just isn't able to use the insulin that you have as well. And when it can't do that, your body can't use that glucose, and it's your fat burning system in your body is going to be delayed or slowed as well. So you've got, and then the problem with that is that insulin resistance, even early beginning stages, are going to add to the inflammation. So you've got low-grade inflammation, early insulin resistance, excess body fat. They're all kind of feeding each other. And then to top it off, weight gain or carrying excess body fat is associated with leptin resistance. And leptin is a hormone that most people don't know much about, but it's a really important one because it tells our brain when to eat. More importantly, it tells our body when to stop eating. And it also tells the body when to slow up or speed up metabolism. So you really want your leptin working right or signaling the right things if you're trying to lose weight. But research suggests that the functioning of your leptin becomes altered when you gain weight and you have low-grade inflammation in the body. So with that, it's just not setting the stage for things to really work with you. Maybe you're trying to eat the right things and be active and manage stress, but it's hard when this hormone leptin isn't telling you the right things, isn't telling your metabolism to speed up, or isn't telling your body to, hey, you're full, stop eating.
Right.
And it's just it's almost like a snowball effect, like you just start rolling down this hill, and it's it makes it really, really frustrating. Whether you're trying to lose 5 to 10 pounds or you're trying to lose, 50 to 60, it doesn't matter. It's frustrating. And so, I tell people to think of low-grade inflammation as kind of like an irritation in your body, like a small irritation, or I like like a small fire in your body, and it kind of stays contained, but as it grows, those ambers or those flames from the fire are going to kind of spread, and inflammation is going to grow in the body if you don't get it under control. So essentially, when you've got this low-grade inflammation and you're just feel like you're beating your head against the wall with all your healthy habits and not getting anywhere, a lot of times it means the body needs to calm down. The body needs to chill out. It needs these irritations to kind of slowly go away. And a lot of times those immediate irritations are what we're putting in the body. Our stress plays a huge one. Particularly when it comes to weight. Sleep is I think sleep is probably my top health habit, because I know for me personally, if I don't get a good night's sleep, that affects what I eat the next day. That affects my workout, or if I make my workout, it affects how well or capable I am of managing my stress. So, and when you don't get adequate sleep, research associates that with weight gain, or even, the inability to lose weight. So it's all
we talk about that in my program as well, that the sleep is so important too. Now, if you actually eat anti-inflammatory foods, can you make a change?
Yes. And what's so funny to me, and you may find this too in your practice, I think we've just been trained by kind of diet culture. The first thing people always say to me when they want to reduce inflammation for joint pain or whatever, they just want to reduce inflammation. So say, okay, what do I need to cut out? What do I need to stop eating? And it always blows their mind, because I circle them back to, okay, first off, we're not focusing on what you're cutting out. We will, but we aren't focusing on that. Let's focus on adding. People don't realize how much power there are in the nutrients and compounds found in those good foods.
Right.
And, yes, you may be getting some of the quote unquote bad stuff that's causing inflammation, but I guarantee you most people are not getting near enough of the good stuff. So I tell people, let's start by loading up on those anti-inflammatory foods, which when we go through them, they're not going to surprise people. They're good for everything, and it's largely because of their anti-inflammatory effects that they're associated with positive things in the body. So they're probably not going to surprise people, but there's so much power in them. And I think people forget that. So let's start loading the diet with more of those.
Right.
And then what you automatically find a lot of times is some of those bad, or I call them inflammers in your diet that you may have. When you start adding the good stuff, you automatically decrease some of those inflammers some naturally. So it doesn't feel as much as like deprivation or you can't have this. If you're getting the good stuff, it naturally cleans up your diet a little anyway. And then, down the road, once you've adopted these eating habits or more of these anti-inflammatory eating habits, then we might want to take a look at, maybe you've got a really bad diet soda habit, so let's focus on that a little, let's focus on the good stuff first.
Yeah. I think that really resonates with me too, because the people in my program, when they start building their meals, and like I said, I don't say this out loud often enough that this is an anti-inflammatory eating style, but when they build the anti-inflammatory meals, they start to lose some weight naturally, but also I can't tell you how many people say, oh, I thought I was going to have painful knees walking up and down stairs for the rest of my life, and that went away. Or I had this pain when I exercised, and that went away now that I eat these foods. And so there's really, there's hope for weight loss. There's hope for just feeling better.
You see skin irritations clear up. If you're having, maybe you've been bloated lately when you eat, a lot of times you see that, just little, and that's what's hard with inflammation is, it's like those little subtle things that, something's not quite right with your body, but it's not near bad enough to ever go to the doctor for. So we just kind of brush them off. But I like to say, those are kind of the little red flags. Like if you start to notice, like you've got a new kind of digestive issue that maybe comes and goes and you can't really pinpoint anything, but that's sometimes a little red flag your body's waving like, hey, there's some inflammation going on, let's get this calmed down. Again, it's like a continuum. So you're just trying to stay at the lower end of that inflammation continuum.
And then when it goes away, people are just like, oh, I don't want to put up with that anymore. I can go down my stairs now and I like it,
I love it when that happens, when people can actually see that connection between diet, because, think about weight loss. It is slow and gradual, which is what it's supposed to be, is, to keep it off. But it gets a little frustrating that you don't see those instant results. But adopting more of these foods, these anti-inflammatory foods, and cutting out some of the inflammers, you can see if you stick with it a few days, people start to see almost instant, just small little things. And joints are often one of the first places you see it.
Yep. I love that. Well, let's talk about these eight anti-inflammatory foods that you had in your post on Instagram, and we'll talk a little bit about some practical tips, because like you said, they're not things that will surprise people, but let's talk about the questions that we get about these.
Okay.
So let's start with leafy greens. I get some eye rolls about leafy greens. So how can we make leafy greens really easy?
You know what? I started rolling my eyes too at leafy greens because when I was going through all the research for my first cookbook, Meals That Heal, it's very important to me that I am just so thorough in my research and knowledge. And I just kind of have to do a deep dive, into all the research and then come back up to the surface, be like, okay, what does this mean for my next door neighbor, for my mom? How do I translate this to, something people actually want to read or know about? But the first three foods we're actually going to talk about, the first three categories, those, and leafy greens was the number one. Those were the foods when I was going through the research that I just got so sick of seeing. And well, leafy greens were the top one. I was just like, oh, y'all, give me another food. Give me another food group, other than leafy greens. And I'll spoil it's berries and cruciferous vegetables, and we'll get to those. But those were the three that you just could not ignore because there's just so much research on them. And there really is a lot of research on leafy greens. But I think people think that means salads. And
right.
doesn't
Rabbit food.
It doesn't necessarily. You can throw them into a smoothie, but where I really kind of sneak them in, during the day or during the week is, I will, if I'm making like a saucy skillet dish, then baby spinach is one I buy every week because you can serve it raw, like as a salad or in a smoothie, but you can also, it wilts very quickly. You can throw it in at the last minute when you're cooking. So that's one I will throw in at the end of like a saucy skillet dish. Sometimes I will even, maybe if it's a dish, a casserole or a skillet dish or something that I'm serving my kids over rice, then I'll just do a bed of like baby spinach and serve mine over that, and it naturally wilts. It's just little things like that, just kind of rethinking, and it doesn't have to be a whole serving at a time, even a little handful that you throw in your sandwich or your wrap, that's great,
I'm all about that, not measuring or worrying too much about that. I also will put a handful in my eggs in the morning when I'm having it, because it wilts really easily, so it's just there, and it's so good.
Exactly.
Awesome.
But if you can aim for around a cup a day. So, if you're throwing some in your eggs and then maybe you're, having a little with your dinner, you've got your cup.
Right.
So aim for a cup a day.
Yeah, I love that. And I even have one of my college kids hates salad. They call salad dressing salad sauce, and they're like, why would anyone eat this wet? Really grossed out by it, but we'll eat it. That kid will eat it, mixed into a dish, and also we'll put it in a sandwich. It's not, because wilted is fine. And, in a sandwich, not wet is fine as well.
That's funny.
But you don't have to like salad to mix these in,
Yeah. And I think that brings up a great point that pertains to all these foods we're going to talk about. It's not all or nothing. So maybe you don't get a cup in or more a day. Okay. That third or half a cup is better than nothing, So we tend to have I have an all or nothing and think, I can't get it all in or get that whole workout in, or, but any little bit is good.
Right. Okay, let's talk about berries. You recommend about 2 to 3 cups a week. So practically, how do you like to work berries into your day?
Berries are one of the ones I find easier to do. I love the fresh right now because they're so good right now, but winter will be coming. And I'm really into raspberries right now, and the organic ones have been on sale. So, I'll just grab those when I'm working in the afternoon or at night, and before I know it, I almost eat a container, or throw them on yogurt or things like that. But you can also do frozen, and a lot of times frozen are as nutritious, maybe even more nutritious than your fresh, because your frozen are going to be flash frozen pretty quickly after they're harvested, versus the fresh potentially getting on a truck and traveling, from California across the country and then sitting on the grocery store shelf. Because once a fruit or vegetable gets picked, or when it's picked, it's at its prime nutritionally, it's at its max potential nutritionally. So from there on out, it slowly loses nutrients. But when you freeze berries or produce, that halts the nutrient loss.
Nice. I live in a place that's very cold in the winter, of course. So I love the frozen berries in the cold season, because I heat them up and then I have them with, some full fat Greek yogurt, or just as a side with some cinnamon sprinkled on top. And it's so warming on a cold day. I adore that.
Yeah. So in 2 to 3 cups, that isn't a ton, that's a half to 2/3 of a cup a couple of times a week, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, cruciferous vegetables are stinky vegetables.
Yes.
It's funny, our kitchen is near our mudroom, and if you've cooked a cruciferous vegetable, it smells like feet in the mudroom. I mean, they really, if you don't put the fan on, if you get to put the fan on, they linger.
I tell people, like, that's kind of your tip off. If it stinks when it's cooking, it's usually a cruciferous vegetable. And it's those sulfur compounds in cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kale. It's sulfur compounds, which is why you get the odor. But those sulfur compounds also have the anti-inflammatory and disease preventive qualities in them as well. And that's why they're so good. So, aiming to get about 5 servings a week. Just work them in when you can. Just make a point to work them in.
Right. And I think it's a super, it's also, I try to avoid being a food judge in general, but it is a superfood for women in perimenopause, menopause. I mean, this is your thing you should be planning your week around is your cruciferous vegetables, because it feels so much better.
Yes. And particularly if for cancer prevention, there's a lot of research around the cruciferous vegetables and anti-inflammatory properties and possibly, cancer prevention or risk reduction.
And if you can share, Carolyn and I have the same favorite way of cooking cruciferous vegetables. So if you would share that.
Oh yes. Roasted. That's almost always how I do them. I don't think I've cooked them in another way in a long time, unless it's been like on a sheet pan dish or something, but that was kind of roasted. I love them roasted. And I will even cook like broccoli, do it like at the start of my meal or when I start cooking dinner, and I'll pull it out of the oven, because you get it really, the outside caramelizes and gets kind of crispy. And I found my family will walk by and start snacking on them, on the broccoli. And so, by dinner time, we don't have a ton left, but I'm fine with it because they're snacking on broccoli,
So good.
So,
I get people who don't generally like some of these vegetables, and they'll eat it at my house, or I'll have brought it to a family dinner, and people say, how did you make that? Because my family ate that and they never eat cauliflower or whatever it is, and it's always just roasted with some olive oil and salt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't give up on vegetables until you've tried them roasted.
Yes, exactly. Awesome. Okay. So you also talked about gut health promoters, and I started just bringing sauerkraut or kimchi to the table because my family will take a little bit and eat it with their meal. But one of the ones you talk about in your post is kombucha. And I get a lot of questions about kombucha, and sometimes I don't know what to say because the sugar levels are really variable. And I don't know, what can you tell us about kombucha and how to?
So, well, I will say first, it took me a long time to find a kombucha that I liked, because some of them can have a very vinegary taste to them.
Ooh.
They're going to have a little acidic taste. So I was so proud of myself when I found a brand that I really, really just loved. And I will, that is something I try to get in every day. And I found I really like to kind of make it like a kombucha cocktail. I'll put it over ice, and then I'll add a splash of pomegranate or cranberry or cherry juice to it, just to kind of soften some of the fizzy or maybe acidic tones. And I really enjoy sipping on it late in the day. People worry about the sugar a lot, and it does vary a lot in there. But the first thing people need to remember is the probiotics are created or nourished during the fermentation process. And so you've got to have some natural sugar in there for the fermentation process.
Right.
So, I look for one, like if it's 8 fluid ounces or a cup, I really don't want to see more than, like 15 grams of sugars or carbohydrate in there. And then you don't necessarily have to drink the whole bottle. I think, there's a big study that came out last summer from Stanford, I think,
Mhm.
and looking at just the benefits that getting probiotic rich food has. And they called one serving 2/3 of a cup, 6 fluid ounces,
Oh gosh,
or
yeah, not
3/4
that
of a cup.
much.
Sorry.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's not a ton. That's not a ton. And I think with like the kimchi and sauerkraut, it was a fourth a cup. So we're not talking
Yeah.
huge amounts here. So, even if you are watching your total carbs, if you plan right, this isn't something that's going to make or break your diet, or break
Right,
your
right.
diet. It's something you can definitely work in, and I think it's something that's worthwhile to work in.
Okay, great. And actually, in my program, we don't count anything. So
Oh, that's great.
yeah, so it's good to know though how to use that. And actually, I love that idea of the mocktail. I totally want to try that.
Yeah.
And it's good to know too that when you try kombucha for the first time, that there are so many different tastes. That
Yeah.
if you don't like the first one you try some other ones, and
Yeah.
you'll
It's just
find
an
what you like.
experimentation process for a while there. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't think I'm ever going to like this stuff. And I need
Right.
to.
That's great. That's great. Okay, green tea.
Mhm.
Do you have a favorite flavor of this, or how does this work into
I
your
really don't.
regular?
I'm big on adding like some citrus or citrus juice to my brewed teas, whether
Okay.
they're hot or cold.
Yeah.
But not really. I just add lemon or lime or
Yeah.
orange slices
The
to
one I
it.
think it's good to experiment with.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And again, I think this is one too, like they're gonna vary slightly by brand, the flavor.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't give up if you find one that you're just like, I'm not crazy about this,
Right, right.
try
I
another
think
brand.
lately I like the jasmine green.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I tend to also just get sick of something after I've had it for a while, so
True.
I'll move on from there. But it's a
Same
nice thing
here.
to have in between meals. Um,
Yeah.
so I love that. So let's talk nuts and seeds. Now I'm not a snacker.
Hmm.
So if what would you advise me, like how to get nuts and seeds into my week when I'm not going to have them as a snack?
Yeah. So, and I'm not a big snacker too. If I'm hungry, then that's usually my sign that I need to eat
Yeah,
something,
me too.
substantial or, a meal. But you can work them into your dishes, particularly like if your salads. I love sprinkling, toasted nuts on top of a salad just to add crunch and just extra flavor and some good fats. But your other option is like, if you're going into a meal, and maybe you're really hungry going into the meal, having a handful of nuts, like before you eat your meal, particularly if
Mhm.
you're really, really hungry, can be a great way just to kind of satisfy some of that hunger. So you're more able to make better choices during that meal or for that meal. Can be a great way. And then, you
I love
know,
that.
Greek yogurt is a great vehicle to put nuts on, nuts and berries, toasted
Mhm.
almonds, walnuts, that type of thing. And you're not talking about a ton of nuts that you need. It's a half to 1 ounce per day, which isn't a lot when you actually stop and measure that
Yeah,
out.
yeah. So you can just sprinkle on top, and it
Yeah.
adds a nice crunch too without, some of the times where, I've moved away from some of the granolas that are on the shelf
Yeah.
because they're just so very sweet.
Yeah.
Um, and so, but you can get that crunch with the nuts. So I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And I
And then
like,
that crunch can substitute like for croutons on a salad and
oh yeah, yeah.
so
I love what you said about using it when you're kind of coming to a meal overly hungry, because that's a we all face that sometimes. We've been
mhm.
delayed to our meal, or whatever happens, or we just underfed ourselves at the at the earlier meal.
Yeah. Or maybe you can't you're ready to eat, but you can't get to that meal for like an hour. I think nuts are a great option
Yeah,
because of their satiety factor. And you're not gonna feel like you will after a complete meal, but it will get you to that meal without feeling
right.
totally famished and just okay, ready to eat the whole table.
Yeah, right, right. That's so good. Okay, we've got two more to go. Extra virgin olive oil. Some people understand what that means, and some people don't. So, can you explain what the extra virgin? What does that mean, and why would we want to pick that one?
Yeah. So essentially, extra virgin olive oil is very minimally pressed olives, or very minimally pressed olive oil. So they take the olives, and usually it's a first pressing. And so they're getting all of the initial good stuff out of the olive oil. And then it's much less refined and much less processed than a lot of like your just, olive oil or olive oil blends out there. And from an anti-inflammatory perspective, olive oil has a compound in it called oleocanthal, which is an anti-inflammatory compound that's only found in olive oil. And you find much higher levels in your extra virgin. And some of the studies there was one or two that compared oleocanthal to having the anti-inflammatory effects that are comparable to aspirin or ibuprofen.
Wow.
Which is crazy. Yeah. So use extra virgin when you are doing anything raw, salad dressings, marinades, anything like that. And then for low to medium heat. Don't use it though above medium heat because it will start to break down.
Great. Great. Thank you. That's super helpful because it's worth noticing on the label which one that is. And
Yeah.
and those are the reasons why. Terrific.
Yeah.
So the last one we have is fatty fish. And the classic one that I think of course, is salmon, but are there also other fatty fishes you would recommend?
And I really have to have that is in there primarily for the omega-3s that pretty much all Americans are lacking, or most Americans are lacking in their diet. And
Yeah.
omega-3s are, there's lots of different nutrients that work in anti-inflammatory capacities, but omega-3s are one of the clearest to see, just almost an instant anti-inflammatory effect. But you need the omega-3s that come from fish or algae. And those forms are DHA and EPA. So that's why you want the fatty fish or the fattier seafood or the cold water seafood. Cold water seafood is usually going to have more fat to keep the shellfish or fish alive. So like there's some oysters that actually are a good source of omega-3s. Any kind of fish that seems a little has a little more oil to it, or a little fattier. So mackerel, sardines, there's any of those cold water fish are going to be good. And then salmon is a great one.
Yeah. And then so how can is there a way for people who don't eat fish to get the algae in their food? I mean, I've seen it in supplements, the omega-3 vegan algae supplement, but is there an easy way at the grocery store to find algae?
I am not a big fish eater, I have to admit.
Okay. Yeah.
So I take an omega-3 supplement, but I tell people what you want to look for is you want to look for one that is predominantly made with EPA and DHA. So turn it over to the back. And the one that I take is about, I may get this backwards, but about 40% DHA, 60% EPA, or vice versa. But there's really little there's not much ALA. There's, about 98 to 98% is made up of those of EPA and DHA as the omega-3 fatty acids in it.
Great. And the thing that I love about the fatty fishes are we forget sometimes to put enough healthy fat in our meals, and and I like it because it helps you not be hungry till the next meal. I work with a lot of professional women, and they have busy days, and they need to be, fueled for the whole afternoon, or the whole morning after they've had their meal, and they've got stuff to do. So they need to, not be thinking every 2 hours, I'm hungry. So fatty fish are one of the great ways, along with our extra virgin olive oil as well, to keep you going every afternoon to get your stuff done.
Definitely.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you going through those. I hope, there's some really good tips there, I think, for our audience.
Good. I always love sharing. And again, pick one or two. Don't try to do all these overnight, and just work on slowly adding and being consistent with that adding.
Yeah. I'm sure there's something in the list that our listeners are thinking, oh, I could add that, or have that a little more often, or.
Yeah.
So
hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, I appreciate you coming and talking today, and this will be on our podcast and on YouTube. So I will post in social media kind of what your contacts are, but please tell us where people can find you on socials, and what the name of your podcast again, so that people who are just listening in the car can find you.
Okay, well, I am most active on Instagram, and my handle is at realfoodreallife_RD. You should also be able to search under my name, which is Carolyn Williams, to find me as well. And my new book, Meals That Heal One Pot, will be coming out September 27th. So you can should be able to find it in any major bookstore, online or in person starting then. But you can go ahead and pre-order starting now. And I think if you pre-order, you'll actually get it maybe a few days, a little before that September 27th date. And you can pre-order, online at any of your major retailers, Amazon. It's available everywhere. If you just search Meals That Heal One Pot.
Terrific. Thank you so much.
Thank
and
you.
Tell us the name of your podcast again, too, for our podcast listeners.
Yeah, so I co-host Happy Eating. It's the Happy Eating podcast, and I co-host it with Briley Horton, who is another dietitian, and she's the former food nutrition director for Cooking Light magazine. And we really got intrigued with the whole connection between lifestyle and food and mental wellness. Just when we were doing our own research, we couldn't find the answers that we need, and we thought, why is everybody acting like the brain isn't part of the body and isn't affected by food, But we also take a very lighthearted approach. It's a serious topic, but we try to make it very fun and approachable, and we're very candid. Well,
I appreciate you doing that work too, because it's so important in our modern times, and it's always nice to talk to someone else who believes that food is medicine and that we are going to feel better when we eat the foods that serve our bodies and nourish us, and in our bodies and our minds. So thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.